She tried to take my home over $50. Not $5,000. Not $50,000. Just $50. And if I hadn't uncovered one small, carefully hidden secret, I would not be living here today to tell you this story. What happened inside that HOA board meeting changed everything, and by the end of this, you'll understand why some people should never be given power over others. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. I found the letter taped to my front door. Not mailed. Not placed respectfully in my mailbox. Taped. Like a public warning. The bright red header read, "Final notice, property seizure pending." My hands actually trembled. According to the letter, I owed the Homeowners Association $50 for improper trash bin placement. $50. They claimed my trash bin had been visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup day. I stood there in disbelief. I had lived in this neighborhood for 8 years. Never a late payment, never a violation, but at the bottom of the letter was the real threat. Failure to pay within 7 days could result in legal action and property lien procedures. Property lien, over $50. I marched straight to the HOA office that afternoon. The president, Linda Harper, was already seated at the head of the conference table when I arrived. Perfect posture, perfect smile, cold eyes. "Rules are rules," she said calmly. "We enforce them equally." I had seen other bins left out overnight dozens of times. No red notices, no threats. When I questioned her, she slid a printed photo across the table. A time-stamped image of my trash bin at the curb. "We document everything," she added. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. That evening, I walked the neighborhood. I counted 6 homes with bins still visible from the street. No red notices taped to their doors. That's when I realized this wasn't about trash. It was about me. 2 days later, a second letter arrived. This one included late fees. The total now stood at $75. The tone was harsher. Legal language. Intimidation. And then I noticed something strange. A small clerical code printed in the corner of the document. A code that didn't match the association's standard formatting. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was the first crack in her perfect system. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. That tiny clerical code in the corner of the notice kept replaying in my mind. I had worked in administrative compliance years ago, and formatting inconsistencies were not random accidents. They were fingerprints, quiet ones, the kind most people ignore. The code printed on my violation notice ended with P3. I pulled out an older HOA letter from 2 years prior when they had announced landscaping updates. That document ended with G1. Completely different classification structure. Why would a simple trash bin violation require a different processing code? The next morning, I requested a full account statement from the HOA office. Linda's assistant hesitated before printing it. That hesitation told me more than any spreadsheet could. When I reviewed the statement, my stomach dropped. There were 3 prior warnings listed on my account, all dated within the last 60 days, all marked as digital delivery confirmed. I never received them. No emails, no letters, nothing taped to my door. When I pointed this out, Linda leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "Our system shows successful delivery." "What system?" I asked. "Our upgraded compliance tracking software," she replied smoothly. Upgraded. I left the office and began walking door to door. Carefully, casually. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just asked neighbors whether they had received similar notices. Recently, 3 of them had. All minor violations. All small amounts. All escalating quickly with added fees. One elderly neighbor, Mr. Collins, showed me his notice. Same formatting. Same red header. Same clerical code ending in P3. But his was dated 4 days before mine. He paid immediately, afraid of legal action. That's when it hit me. This wasn't enforcement. It was revenue generation. Small amounts. Scary language. Fast escalation. Most people would simply pay rather than fight. $50 here. $75 there. $100 somewhere else. Multiply that by dozens of homes. I requested the official HOA violation policy documents. By law, they had to provide them. Linda wasn't pleased. The policy clearly stated that 3 written warnings must be delivered via certified mail before any late fees could apply. Certified mail, not digital, not taped to doors. Certified. There was no signature record on my account. No postal confirmation. Nothing. When I confronted Linda with the policy, her smile thinned. "You're misinterpreting procedural flexibility," she said. Procedural flexibility. That's when she made her mistake. She mentioned that all violation notices were logged and archived digitally with timestamps. "Everything is backed up," she added confidently. Backed up. That single word gave me an idea. If everything was archived, then there was a trail. And trails can't lie. That night, I opened my laptop and began researching something most homeowners never think about: HOA transparency laws. And what I found would change everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, every HOA statute for our state pulled up on the screen. Most homeowners never read these documents. They trust the board. They assume fairness. I used to be one of them. But Linda had underestimated something. I read every clause about enforcement, delivery procedures, and homeowner rights. And there it was, buried deep in Section 8.3 of our state's HOA transparency law. Homeowners have the legal right to request digital audit logs of any compliance notices issued against their property. Digital audit logs, time stamps, delivery methods, access history. If she claimed the system showed successful delivery, then the logs would prove it. Or expose it. The next morning, I sent a formal written request by certified mail demanding a full digital audit trail of all violations issued to my property within the past 6 months. I copied the entire board. I also quoted Section 8.3 word for word. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was Linda. Her tone had changed. "You don't need to escalate this," she said carefully. "We can resolve the balance today." Balance. Not violation. Balance. I told her I wasn't paying anything until I received the audit logs required by law. Silence. Then, "Those files take time to retrieve." "They shouldn't," I replied. "You said everything is backed up." That was the first time she didn't have an immediate answer. 2 days passed. On the 3rd day, I received a USB drive in a sealed envelope from the HOA office. No letter. No explanation. Just files. I plugged it into my laptop. There were folders labeled by property address. Mine included 4 PDF notices, the 3 prior warnings, and the final notice. But something was wrong. The creation timestamps were all within the same hour. The same hour. According to the documents, the first warning had supposedly been issued 60 days ago. The second 30 days ago. The third 2 weeks ago. Yet every file was created 3 days earlier, the day after I confronted her. My pulse quickened. I right-clicked on the file properties. Metadata doesn't lie. Author: L. Harper_admin. Modified date: 3 days ago. There were no historical log entries. No automated delivery confirmations. No certified mail scans. Just freshly generated PDFs made to look older. I cross-checked Mr. Collins' files. He agreed to show me his USB copy. Same pattern. Files created days ago. Backdated dates printed inside the document. This wasn't procedural flexibility. It was fabrication. But here's where it got even worse. Inside one of the system folders, I noticed something she must have overlooked: an internal spreadsheet titled Compliance Revenue Projection. I opened it, and that's when I realized the $50 wasn't random at all. When I opened the file labeled Compliance Revenue Projection, I expected routine budgeting numbers, landscaping expenses, pool maintenance, maybe seasonal repairs. That's what HOAs usually track. What I saw instead made my hands go cold. The spreadsheet wasn't about maintenance. It was about penalties. There were columns labeled minor exterior, trash exposure, holiday decor duration, and unapproved modifications. Next to each category was an estimated number of violations per quarter. Then, an average fine amount. Then, projected revenue totals. Projected revenue, not projected compliance. Revenue. According to the sheet, the HOA expected to collect over $18,000 in minor violations this year alone. And most of them were under $100. Small enough that homeowners would likely just pay. Large enough to quietly add up. But the most disturbing column was labeled escalation yield. Next to certain homes, including mine, there were notes: non-participatory, no event attendance, potential resistance. Potential resistance. My house had a small yellow marker beside it. I had declined to volunteer at last year's HOA holiday fundraiser. I had skipped 2 community meetings. Was that enough to flag me? The document wasn't dated publicly, but the metadata showed it was updated monthly. The latest edit had been made the same week I received my violation. This wasn't random enforcement. It was targeted pressure. I printed everything. Every spreadsheet tab. Every timestamp. Every metadata screen. Then I noticed one more thing. At the bottom of the sheet, in a hidden row, was a formula calculating legal escalation projections, including liens. Projected lien conversions. 3 to 5 annually. Homes. Actual homes. That meant they anticipated at least 3 homeowners each year either failing to pay or being pushed into legal action severe enough to place a lien on their property. All from minor infractions. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. If this went public, it wouldn't just embarrass Linda. It could dismantle the entire board. But I couldn't rush. If I accused her without strategy, she could claim misunderstanding. She could spin it as financial forecasting. She could turn the board against me. I needed witnesses. I needed allies. That evening, I quietly invited 5 neighbors over for coffee. Mr. Collins came. So did Maria from 2 houses down. And Jason, who had paid a landscaping fine last month without question. I didn't start with accusations. I showed them the timestamps. Then the metadata. Then the revenue projections. No one spoke for nearly a full minute. Finally, Mr. Collins whispered, "They expected us to just pay." Maria looked furious. Jason looked betrayed. That's when I realized something powerful. It wasn't just about my $50 anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, spreads faster than any violation notice. But confronting Linda directly would require something bigger than printed pages. We needed to use her own rules against her. And I knew exactly how to do it. HOA bylaws are written to protect the board, but if you read them carefully, they also protect homeowners. Buried in Article 12 of our association's governing documents was a clause most people never notice. A special meeting of members can be called if 20% of homeowners submit a signed written petition requesting it. We had 84 homes in our neighborhood. That meant we needed 17 signatures. 17. That was all it would take to legally force a public meeting where the board had to answer questions in front of the entire community. The next morning, I drafted the petition. It was calm, professional, non-accusatory. Request for special member meeting to address compliance enforcement transparency and digital record procedures. No emotional language, no claims of corruption, just transparency. Then I attached a short summary referencing inconsistencies in violation timestamps and requesting clarification of enforcement processes. By evening, the 5 neighbors who had seen the spreadsheet had already signed. 12 more to go. I went door to door, not with anger, but with evidence. I showed timestamps. I explained the certified mail requirement. I mentioned projected lien conversions without exaggeration. Some homeowners were hesitant. They didn't want conflict. But when they heard about projected revenue targets tied to minor violations, their expressions changed. By the end of 2 days, I had 19 signatures. 2 more than required. I submitted the petition via certified mail and emailed a digital copy to every board member simultaneously. Within hours, Linda responded. The board finds this petition unnecessary and based on misinterpretation. Unnecessary. The bylaws said otherwise. Under the rules, the board had 30 days to schedule the meeting. They scheduled it for day 29. Of course they did. In the weeks leading up to the meeting, something interesting happened. Violation notices slowed, completely. Not just for me, for everyone. Mr. Collins didn't receive his usual lawn warning. Maria's holiday lights stayed up 2 days longer than allowed. Silence. It was as if enforcement had been quietly paused. That told me one thing. They were nervous. But Linda wasn't going down quietly. 3 days before the meeting, I received another letter, this time from an attorney representing the HOA. It warned that distributing internal financial documents could violate association confidentiality policies. Confidentiality. The spreadsheet hadn't been marked confidential. There was no watermark, no restriction notice, and it had been provided on the USB drive they voluntarily sent. This wasn't about policy. It was intimidation. I forwarded the letter to the neighbors who had signed the petition. Instead of backing down, 3 more homeowners contacted me asking to attend the meeting. By the time meeting day arrived, I wasn't standing alone. But I still hadn't revealed everything. There was one piece of evidence I hadn't shared yet. The part that would make it impossible for Linda to explain her way out. And I planned to reveal it at exactly the right moment. The community clubhouse was fuller than I had ever seen it. Normally, HOA meetings attracted maybe 10 homeowners. That night, nearly 40 chairs were filled. Couples sat shoulder to shoulder. Some held printed copies of violation notices. Others just looked tense. Linda sat at the front table with the rest of the board, composed as always. Her posture was straight, her expression neutral. If she was nervous, she hid it well. The meeting began with routine agenda items, landscaping updates, pool maintenance scheduling, budget summaries. She was stalling. Finally, the secretary announced the special petition item, discussion of compliance enforcement transparency. Linda stood. Our enforcement system is fair, automated, and applied equally, she began. Recent allegations stem from misunderstandings of digital documentation processes. Allegations. I waited until she finished speaking before raising my hand. She nodded, tight smile in place. I walked to the front, carrying a folder, but the folder wasn't what mattered. My concern isn't misunderstanding, I said calmly. It's evidence. I connected my laptop to the clubhouse projector. Gasps filled the room as the screen displayed the metadata timestamps, file creation dates all within the same hour. Linda shifted in her seat. These are internal document processing times, she said quickly. Not violation dates. I expected that response. That's when I revealed the spreadsheet, compliance revenue projection. Murmurs rippled through the room. She attempted to dismiss it as financial forecasting. Then I played the final piece. 2 weeks earlier, after receiving the USB drive, I had called the HOA office to ask for clarification about digital delivery logs. I recorded the call. In our state, one-party consent recording is legal. Her voice filled the room through the speakers. We don't actually use certified mail unless someone disputes, she said in the recording. It's more efficient to generate notices in batches when necessary. Generate notices in batches. The room fell silent. That statement contradicted the official policy requiring certified mail before late fees. Linda's face drained of color. That recording is taken out of context, she insisted. So I played the next 30 seconds. Her voice again. Most homeowners just pay. It's easier that way. No one spoke. Mr. Collins stood slowly. You threatened liens over $50, he said quietly. Maria added, you targeted people. Board members began whispering among themselves. One of them, a man who had barely spoken all year, leaned toward his microphone. Linda, he said carefully, why were violation files created retroactively? She didn't answer immediately, and that pause said everything. But there was still one more detail I hadn't shared, something hidden in plain sight that tied the projected revenue directly to personal gain. And once that was revealed, there would be no recovery. The room was already tense when I closed the recording. But what I was about to show them would shift the atmosphere from suspicion to certainty. I'd like everyone to look at one more thing, I said, reopening the spreadsheet. I zoomed into a tab most people would have ignored, labeled, vendor adjustments. At first glance, it looked harmless. Routine line items, software upgrades, administrative fees, compliance processing. But when I scrolled down, a pattern appeared. Each quarter, the projected compliance revenue increased. And alongside it, a line titled Administrative Oversight Compensation also increased. Same percentages, same growth curve. Someone in the room whispered, what does that mean? I highlighted the formula cell. The oversight compensation wasn't a fixed salary. It was calculated as a percentage of compliance revenue collected. 5%. If the HOA collected $18,000 in minor violations, that meant $900 allocated to administrative oversight. And who oversaw compliance? The HOA president, Linda. She leaned toward the microphone. That compensation structure was approved years ago. Maybe it was. But the projected revenue spike began only 8 months ago. 8 months ago, the same time the upgraded compliance software was introduced. The same time minor violations began escalating rapidly. I clicked another tab. It showed monthly compliance totals. Before the software upgrade, average $1,200 per quarter. After the upgrade, over $4,500 per quarter. Nearly quadruple, without any major rule changes, without any community vote, and the oversight compensation followed perfectly in step. 5% of every dollar collected. Small fines, big volume. The room felt heavier now. This wasn't about procedural flexibility. This wasn't even just about fabricated timestamps. It was about incentive. If you financially benefit from increasing violations, enforcement stops being neutral. It becomes profitable. One of the other board members cleared his throat. Linda, were homeowners informed that your compensation adjusts with compliance revenue? Silence. The bylaws required disclosure of any compensation tied to association income streams. There had been no such disclosure in any annual meeting minutes. I opened one final document, last year's meeting summary. No mention, no vote, no explanation. Linda finally spoke, voice thinner than before. The compensation is minimal. It's administrative. Minimal. To her, maybe. To retirees on fixed incomes receiving escalating notices, it wasn't minimal. Mr. Collins stood again. You threatened my home for $75 while earning a percentage of fines. Murmurs grew louder. The board members exchanged glances. This was no longer a disagreement. It was a conflict of interest. But removing a sitting HOA president required a formal motion, and someone had to make it. For a moment, no one moved. Then something unexpected happened. The quietest board member at the table leaned forward and spoke into the microphone. I move that we initiate an immediate vote of no confidence. And just like that, everything shifted. The moment the words, vote of no confidence, left his mouth, the entire room seemed to inhale at once. Linda straightened in her chair. This is highly irregular, she said sharply. Board matters cannot be decided emotionally. But this wasn't emotional anymore. It was procedural. The bylaws were clear. If a majority of board members seconded a motion of no confidence, a temporary suspension could occur pending a formal removal vote by homeowners. Another board member, Maria's husband, who had rarely spoken during meetings, quietly said, I second the motion. Gasps. 2 out of 5 board members had now publicly challenged the president. Linda's composure cracked for the first time. You're making a mistake, she warned. You don't understand the legal exposure this creates. Legal exposure. That phrase didn't scare anyone anymore. The quiet board member turned to the association's attorney, who had been sitting in the back. Is the motion valid under our bylaws? He asked. The attorney adjusted his glasses, flipping through a binder. Yes, he finally said. A temporary suspension pending a homeowner vote is permissible under Article 9, Section 4. The room erupted into whispers. Linda's microphone clicked on again. This is retaliation. But retaliation requires innocence. The board held a quick closed discussion at the front table while the rest of us waited in near silence. After 5 long minutes, the quiet board member stood. By a vote of 3-2, the board has approved a temporary suspension of the HOA president pending a full membership vote within 14 days. It was done. Linda looked stunned. She gathered her papers slowly, deliberately, as if refusing to rush. As she stood, she scanned the room, not angrily, but calculatingly. This isn't over, she said softly. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud. For a moment, no one moved. Then something unexpected happened. People started talking to each other. Really talking. Neighbors who had barely exchanged greetings before were comparing notices, timelines, amounts. Patterns became clearer as stories overlapped. Jason discovered his landscaping fine had been issued the same day as 5 others on his street. Maria realized her second warning had never been certified either. The narrative was no longer mine alone. It belonged to the community. Over the next 2 weeks, homeowners reviewed their own records. Several requested digital logs. Inconsistencies surfaced quickly. By the time the formal removal vote approached, the mood had shifted from shock to resolve. But Linda wasn't silent during those 14 days. She sent emails, long ones, framing herself as a victim of misunderstanding, claiming the revenue projections were misread, insisting the compensation model was transparent. The final vote would decide everything. And if homeowners chose to believe her instead of the evidence, all of this could unravel. The night of the vote, turnout was higher than any HOA event in history. And the outcome would permanently redefine our neighborhood. The final vote felt bigger than an HOA decision. It felt like a referendum on trust. The clubhouse was packed again, even more crowded than the special meeting. Some homeowners stood along the walls. Others waited outside near the windows, hoping to hear the results. Ballots were distributed quietly. No speeches this time. No dramatic confrontations. Just a single question printed at the top of the page. Do you support the removal of the current HOA president? Yes or no? Linda sat in the front row, no longer at the board table. She looked composed again, but there was a tension in her jaw that hadn't been there before. One by one, ballots were folded and placed into a clear collection box. The attorney and two volunteer homeowners counted them at the front of the room. You could hear every shuffle of paper, every breath. When the final ballot was tallied, the attorney stood. By a vote of 62 to 14, the membership has approved removal of the HOA president. A wave of sound rolled through the room, not cheering exactly, but something heavier. Relief. Linda didn't argue. She didn't protest. She simply stood, gathered her bag, and walked out without a word. That was the last time she attended an HOA meeting. Within weeks, an internal audit was conducted. The compensation structure tied to compliance revenue was eliminated. All outstanding minor violation late fees issued within the previous 6 months were reviewed. Several were dismissed, mine included. The $50 fine that had nearly triggered a lien. Voided. But the real change wasn't financial. It was cultural. The new interim board introduced certified mail tracking for all formal violations. Monthly financial summaries were posted publicly. Compensation disclosures became mandatory agenda items. Transparency replaced intimidation. And here's the part that matters most. If I had simply paid the $50, none of this would have happened. No one would have checked timestamps. No one would have questioned projected lien conversions. No one would have noticed compensation tied to fines. Sometimes power survives because it counts on silence. That was the real secret. Not just the spreadsheet, not just the recording, but the willingness to question something that didn't feel right. A single small inconsistency, a tiny clerical code, led to uncovering a system built on quiet pressure. And that's why I'm telling you this.
Because if someone ever threatens your home over something small, don't panic, don't assume they right. Look closer, ask question, request recorded. You might discover that the real leverage isn't there, it's your. And sometimes all it takes to protect your home is refusing to pay $50 without asking why.